The follow-up engine currently reigns as the most dominant playstyle in Honkai Star Rail, with upwards of a dozen characters, all with some semblance of meta relevance if not prominence. It's no surprise that in a turn-based game where actions are finite in number, the ability to act outside of your turn, thereby exceeding that limitation, comes with an incredible potential for performance. Follow-up attackers are then sectioned off into 3 subcategories based on how their respective follow-up attacks are initiated: traditional follow-up attacks, counterattacks, and our subject for today, summons. Though they share the same basic principle, the nuances between the subgroups are distinct, which greatly influence their synergies and optimizations. Traditional follow-up attacks represent the majority of the engine's cast, with the remaining 2 taking more of a niche role. But with us being well on our way through the latter half of version 2, Hoyo's been working to expand on the lesser acknowledged groups, introducing Yunling for counterattacks while bringing alongside Lingsha and now Sunday for the summon category. In light of the summoner archetype in particular gaining more exposure as of late, having also obtained a new planner ornament set, I wanted to analyze them, detailing their strengths and limitations to find out if they might develop a stronger presence as we near the tail end of the second version and begin to look into version 3. The summoner mechanic was introduced all the way back in version 1.0 with the release of Jingyuan. Summoners thus far fall under the greater follow-up attack category on the basis that it's an attack that takes place outside of your character's own actions. Only in this case, they're effectively treated as standalone party members due to having their own speed count and main turn. Prior to version 2.7, it was difficult if not impossible to interact with summons directly, but they're often designed around their wielders being able to manipulate them indirectly. All summons function off some type of ammunition from which they use to power up their effectiveness, their frequency of activation, or both. The use of his skill, ultimate, and technique, Jingyuan not only grants additional damage on Lightning Lord's next attack, but with each hit per action, Lightning Lord gains bonus speed, enabling it to take its turn sooner in that cycle. Topaz, and by extension her teammates, have a similar component. Follow-up attacking an enemy affected by her Proof of Dead mark advances Numby's action forward by 50%, meaning you can grant Numby an instant attack every 2 turns. Furthermore, she can also afford him a significantly stronger attack through her ultimate that also allows practically all forms of attack against a skill-marked enemy to advance them forward, though he can only get 2 of these attacks per cast of Topaz's ultimate. Finally, Lingsha, who summoned Fuyuan, deals a small amount of damage to all enemies, along with an additional attack against a single one, followed by a party-wide dispel and a decent chunk of healing. Fuyuan's ammo system opens at 3 and can hold a maximum of 5, with use of Lingsha's skill replenishing 3 charges per cast. Outside of her summon's natural per cycle activation, once every 2 turns, she can also get additional uses whenever a party member drops below 60%, as well as an immediate use followed by her ultimate. The main characterization of a summoner is that it's a standalone unit doing the action rather than the character themselves, which raises a lot of interesting questions and use cases that make summoners either better or worse than their counterparts. For the better part of version 2 and especially version 1, the summoner archetype was off to an underwhelming start. The inherent limitations present within Jingyuan's kit made piloting a summoner feel unnecessarily restrictive. Topaz came a few updates in with a comparatively more fluid mechanic for Numby, but the surrounding infrastructure for follow-up attacks had yet to be developed. Once Aventurine, Dr. Ratio, and Robin came into play, Topaz was able to make better use of Numby's party interactions to boost herself up in usage and practicality. However, Jingyuan was unable to, resulting in the potential of summons to still be unrealized for the time being. It was still only 2 units after all, and one more downside set: even though Robin's ultimate was known for turn advancing the entire party, summons would not be included in that. Her synergy with Topaz was through Numby's turn advance condition, not an actual direct benefit to summons. Fortunately, things would begin to change a bit in version 2.6, where not only did we receive a new summoner in the form of Lingsha, who also happened to be the first summoner to have a primarily utility-centric effect as opposed to a damaging one, that is unless you use her in break teams, but we were also given the new Wondrous Banana Amusement Park Planetary set, the first instance of support for the archetype, not just characters. As you know, summons derive their attack strength and crit stats from their wielders, with their only distinct personal attribute being in the form of their speed, which typically cannot be interacted with outside of the user's own parameters. This means that theoretically anything that were to buff the wielder would also buff the summon, and this planet set did exactly that, offering a staggering 48% crit damage in total when a summoner wears it. It's an appreciable buff exclusive to the summoner class, not splashable into any other, but altogether anything that buffs the stats of the user will then transfer over to the summon: damage, crit, attack, anything you have. Relics and planner sets are beginning to get tailor-made to specific roles and niches, as are some characters. The summoner archetype only consists of 3 at the moment, but with the planner set now in the game, I have the impression that Hoyo might be giving them more attention in the near future, notably with the release of Sunday. As the newest Harmony unit, and apparently the only male Harmony character who is in Kaila's, I actually didn't realize it was all girls until that point, Sunday's taking a crack at the supporting role. Now, seeing as how every major Harmony character comes with general buffing followed by a dedicated role, break-related stuff on Run Mei, SP supplementation on Sparkle, and follow-up attacks and party-wide beatdowns for Robin, Sunday's niche is that of summons, among other things. Like Bronya, Sunday's skill enables a target ally to act immediately after him, providing them a damage buff in the process. A noticeable distinction to make is that if you target a party member with a summon, they get even more bonus damage, painting a very clear picture of what type of party members he wants to work with. The running theme with Harmony characters from version 1.6 onwards is that they have a baseline that enables them to work with just about any character, but if you use them for that niche, they will take you much further. That is how Harmony supports are distinguished from one another. Sparkle's kit is designed to be compatible with everyone, but she has a preference for high SP consumption where she can supply even more power. Sunday's skill doubling in power if he targets a summoner is a big tell for who his target audience is going to be. Not just that, but his ultimate happens to be a battery, a great benefit to Jingyuan and Topaz. Jingyuan getting more ultimate uses means he can charge up stacks much faster, which he needs given Sunday can forcibly advance Lightning Lord, allowing you to potentially get 2 strikes of up to 10 attacks each per cycle. Topaz's DPS is tremendously dependent on how often Numby's in the Windfall Bonanza state. He gains access to a stronger follow-up attack and additionally can be advanced forward by virtually all manner of attacks, its bonus damage and attack frequency. Might be a hot take, but even though Sunday's a great asset to the summoners available now, I actually don't think he was intended for any of them, or rather not specifically for them. He's definitively going to be Jingyuan's number 2 without question, but evidently he wasn't designed for the follow-up engine explicitly, despite synergizing with the follow-up attack. He's designed for the summoner archetype in particular, whose characters could either be for the follow-up engine or for the hypercarry engine as demonstrated by Topaz and Jingyuan respectively. Besides, while it would make narrative sense, because they're siblings, I don't think Hoyo would make Sunday compete against Robin directly. If anything, they would make the two work well together, which, if you can afford the party space, they actually do work well together. The point is, Hoyo is cooking up something for the class. I feel like Harmony units are a good indicator for the types of engines and playstyles we'll have, considering they're the backbone of their respective teams. They wouldn't make a Harmony unit with a bias towards summons if they weren't going to go deeper into the archetype. With all that said, let's get to the second part of the video. What are the pros and cons of this type of playstyle? The most notable advantage of a summon over traditional follow-up attacks is their autonomy. Outside of the poor unfortunate soul that is Jingyuan, summons are able to act even if their wielder is under crowd control. Numby and Fuyuan can still take their turns even if Topaz and Lingsha are stunned, frozen, whatever. The only time they can't is if they're knocked down, which also includes being captured, I believe. Follow-up attackers can attack outside of their turn, but only if you have control of them. If they get incapacitated, all their damage goes away too until you cleanse them. Provided Jingyuan's an outlier, all summoners can be expected to have the same privilege of their summons acting independently. Even though cleanses are fairly abundant in this day and age, there's always an immediate repercussion when it comes to getting crowd controlled in the sense that if your carry is stunned, you have to wait until your healer's turn to actually cleanse them, which might not come fast enough. If they're a summoner though, they can still act right away, regardless of their wielder's condition. This is especially relevant for Lingsha. One major weak point in Luocha is that he cannot activate his insurance policy if he himself is stunned. Even if Lingsha gets crowd controlled, Fuyuan can still act on behalf of her to not just heal and cleanse the team, but also break its own master free from whatever debuff impairs her. Second advantage of summoners is the fact that their follow-up effects can take the form of more than just an attack. As shown by Lingsha, while Fuyuan does attack, it also comes with an AoE heal and cleanse on top of it. Follow-up attacks are, as the name implies, exclusively attacks, but there's no rule saying that summon activations have to also always be attacks. In the foreseeable future, we could have a summon activation that gives everyone a shield protecting them from future burst damage. There could be a summon that buffs the team, which in theory could mean anything. Summons can even apply debuffs or dot effects to enemies. This in tandem with the first advantage of being able to act independently from their wielder allows them to once again contribute to the team even if said wielder is unable to. Moreover, as standalone units, you can divide the tasks between them so that the summoner is focusing on one thing while the companion is doing something else. I know they made a quality of life change to Lightning Lord in Pure Fiction so that any additional hits left over carry on over to the next wave, but if say there's only one enemy left open in Pure Fiction, the summoner can focus on taking it out so that all of the summon's value gets put to use on the enemies you want them to. Or another case would be Acheron. Having a summoner apply a debuff and then their summon also apply a debuff means 2 for the price of 1, since Acheron can only get 1 stack of ultimate per action. Now that we have Sunday in the picture, because he moves both the summoner and their companion forward, the summoner in question can blow up the side moves protecting the big boss, so that the summon itself can then go after the big boss. These may appear to be minor, potentially dismissible pros, but minor things all make the difference in a game like this. Fushuan offering a crowd control barrier instead of a cleanse makes her far more effective at dealing with enemies who lock you down than the very units whose job is to handle that kind of thing. One cleanses the crowd control after it's been applied, while the other outright blocks you from being affected by it. Those have very different implications. The pros are of course met with cons too, not the least of which being that in light of being standalone units, you don't actually have control over them. I mean, through Sunday we will, but not being able to manipulate them directly can result in problems with consistency. I know I stated that summons attacking regardless of their master's condition is a good thing, but that can backfire on itself and end up making a summoner more inconsistent than just a traditional follow-up attacker. For Topaz, Numby always attacks whomever is afflicted with a debuff, which gets applied to a random enemy if and when the original target is taken out. Topaz can use his skill to redirect that buff, but you have to wait until her actual turn, during which Numby might exhaust all his empowered attacks on a random enemy you don't want him to. Fortunately, Jingyuan and Lingsha are AoE casters, but unfortunately, they run into their own issues. Contrary to Numby, who advances half a turn, meaning with every 2 follow-ups on his mark he gets to attack, Lightning Lord increases in speed. You can rest assured Jingyuan's summon gets to attack generally once or twice per cycle, but depending on your team's speed and the enemies, it can be tricky to predict exactly when it's going to attack. It might end up striking before you get to apply a crucial buff to maximize its damage. Now for Lingsha, the convenience of her cleanse being attached to her summon can quickly become inconvenient. Apart from her ultimate, there's no way to forcibly trigger Fu Yuan. Her skill only advances her summon forward by 20%, and the insurance policy on her A6 doesn't take into account crowd control activation. Your carry might get hit by something but not actually drop below 60%, at which point Lingsha is a much worse healer than Huohuo, Gallagher, or Locha, who do have on-demand cleanses. In a way, summons acting independently of the wielder is a good thing if you lose control of the wielder, but it might be a bad thing if you do need to control the summon to act at a specific time. The main area where this can mess up is if you're trying to optimize turn rotations. As many of you know, battles in MLC are usually split into 2 waves. Upon completion of the first wave, the next wave comes in, but it's as if a new battle has started. In actuality, there are no 0 cycle clears, but the game treats it as if it's been cleared in 0 cycles because both waves have been completed in less than 1. For traditional follow-ups, if they're supposed to initiate an attack on the first wave but the wave is over, those attacks will carry over into the second wave because they're considered extra actions. Summons, on the other hand, are turns, so when you arrive at the next wave, even if Numby or Fu Yuan or Lightning Lord were supposed to attack next, since the turn order quote-unquote resets, all action values get reset as well, causing you to miss out on potential extra turns. Furthermore, anything that were to advance actions forward for a summon during their turn does not do so, with the sole exception of Lingsha's ultimate. In simpler terms, for example, during the turn Numby attacks, extra actions that would make him advance forward, like a Fei Shao follow-up or a Venturing follow-up right behind him, are completely disregarded despite otherwise doing so outside of his turn. I'm sure this was put in place just to prevent you from attacking with Numby an infinite number of times, but the point is, there are ways to manipulate summons to get them to act faster, but they don't necessarily behave identically to characters. Not for now at least. I'm not certain they'll get summons to be spammed as often as traditional follow-ups even as more come out. Summons naturally benefit from follow-up damage already and all the attributes that interact with it, but alongside that they get the perks of summon boosting effects like Sunday or the Banana Amusement Park set. To keep the categories distinct from each other, they might make summons less easy to control. Sunday helps, but it still doesn't change the fact that summons are standalone entities that take their turn automatically. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for attacking summons, but if in the future we get buff type summoners, I can imagine those buffs going off at the wrong time or on the wrong targets. Time will tell. I have money on summoners becoming a stable archetype despite technically being part of the follow-up engine. I'm honestly surprised at Sunday specifically. I could understand a relic or planner set having something to help out summoners, but I never imagined they would make a 5-star Harmony character, which, like I said earlier, is arguably the most important path in the game based on empirical data. Granted, that's not the only thing Sunday's good at. The battery component opens up the door for him to be a standard hyper carry support, but outside of the vast amounts of people who pull for Sunday purely out of blind delusional faith that they can fix him, Sunday's express target audience is summoners, otherwise they wouldn't have gone the extra mile to specify that in both his skill and ultimate. Again, 40% flat damage bonus lasting 2 turns, a turn advance, 20% battery, tons of crit damage, 20% flat crit rate, and a technique that gives a party even more bonus damage for 2 turns are more than sufficient to make him usable in a general setting, especially with the Relived Ordeal set. So by all means, if you want to use them for just that, go right ahead. However, they went out of their way to include summons, so I have a feeling they might be cooking up more summoners in the future. Begs the question, how far do they plan to go? Do they plan to make one for every playstyle, like a shielder, a debuffer, a dot dealer, etc.? Or is it more that Sunday's a hyper carry support first and a summoner support second, only having the quality of life for summons to make genuine mains feel better? Let's find out what the community thinks in the comments down below, so write down your thoughts on it if you feel like it. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Star Rail archetype discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.